The void of space erupted in a symphony of destruction. Fragments of the research vessel Horizon spiraled in terrible beauty, catching the pale light of a distant neutron star. At the center of this cosmic catastrophe hung Area Nakamura, her body suspended between life and certain death. Her exosuit was more wreckage than protection now. Micro-punctures leaked precious oxygen, and the suit's quantum mesh was torn open like wet paper. Blood, crimson against the deep black of space, formed delicate spheres around her, each droplet a testament to the brutality of the Krellak's boarding action. 12 minutes earlier, the Horizon had been humanity's most advanced deep space research vessel. A floating testament to human ingenuity, it carried technologies so advanced they could reshape entire planetary systems. Now it was little more than a graveyard, its crew reduced to floating debris and rapidly cooling corpses. The Krellaks believed they had won. Their silicon-based biology had always given them a technological edge, or so they thought. What they didn't understand was the true nature of Area Nakamura. As her suit's systems flickered between critical failure and miraculous recovery, Aria's enhanced neural implants processed information at speeds that would have melted a standard human brain. Each system failure triggered a cascade of adaptive protocols, drawing molecular components from the surrounding debris. Her right arm, partially sheared off during the initial attack, began to reconstruct itself. Nanite swarms, microscopic machines woven into her very genetic structure, harvested metallic fragments from the ship's hull. They reassembled bone, muscle, and synthetic tissue with mathematical precision. Quantum entanglement protocol initiated. A voice whispered directly into her auditory cortex. It wasn't external. It was part of her. The Krellak's boarding parties moved through the ship's corridors, their crystalline bodies shifting like living obsidian. They had perfected the art of technological annihilation across 3 galactic sectors. Civilizations fell before them like wheat before a scythe. Humanity was supposed to be just another conquest. But they didn't know Aria. Her left eye, now partially cybernetic, scanned the surrounding space. Tactical overlays mapped every fragment of the destroyed vessel, every trajectory of the alien boarding craft. What looked like random destruction to an outside observer was, to Aria, a complex mathematical landscape of potential and probability. The suit's communication systems had been deliberately destroyed during the initial attack, or so the Krellaks believed. In reality, Aria had activated a quantum communication protocol that would be undetectable by any known scanning technology. Information was already flowing, a silent, invisible transmission that would become the first wave of humanity's counterattack. Her breathing stabilized. The suit's reconstruction was nearly complete, drawing molecular mass from the surrounding debris. Where other species would see destruction, Aria saw raw material. Where others would accept defeat, she saw an opportunity. A massive piece of the ship's quantum core drifted past. Most would consider it catastrophic damage. Aria saw a weapon. The Krellaks believed they understood humanity. They had studied human history, the wars, the conflicts, the periods of technological and social upheaval. They thought they knew humanity's limits. They were wrong. What they didn't understand was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology. It was adaptation. It was the ability to transform limitation into opportunity. And no one embodied that more than Area Nakamura. Her suit was now more than 60% reconstructed. The nanite swarms moved with purpose, drawing energy from quantum entanglement protocols that defied conventional physics. Each molecule was both a building block and a potential weapon. In the vast, cold silence of space, Area Nakamura began to smile. The Krellaks thought this was a victory. They were about to learn the difference between conquest and true transformation. The impossible escape was just beginning. The recovery facility was unlike any medical center in human history. Buried 5 kilometers beneath the Atacama Desert, it represented the pinnacle of human genetic research, a place where the boundaries between biology and technology blurred into non-existence. Area Nakamura's body lay suspended in a quantum resonance healing chamber, her genetic structure under microscopic examination by systems more complex than entire planetary computing networks. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, chief geneticist of Project Prometheus, studied the holographic displays that rotated around Aria's suspended form. "She's not just modified," Elena muttered to her assistant, Dr. Kai Chen. "She's a complete reimagining of human potential." The displays revealed a genetic structure that defied conventional understanding. Where human DNA typically contained 23 chromosome pairs, Aria's genetic code displayed 27 unique chromosomal structures. Each was a marvel of biological engineering. Synthetic sequences integrated so seamlessly that they appeared entirely natural. Her neural pathways were a quantum computer unto themselves. Traditional brain scans showed neural networks that branched and reconnected in real time, adapting to stimuli faster than any known biological system. Nanite clusters were integrated into her cellular structure, functioning as a distributed intelligence network that could reconfigure itself instantaneously. "The Krelax medical scans we recovered suggest they have no concept of what we've achieved," Kai observed, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. The project's origins dated back to humanity's darkest moment, the Great Extinction Protocols discovered in deep space archaeological sites. Remnants of civilizations that had been utterly annihilated by technologically superior species revealed a terrifying cosmic truth. Technological progress without adaptive capability was a death sentence. Humanity's response was Project Prometheus, a multi-generational effort to create not just enhanced humans, but entirely new forms of sentient life. Aria was their magnum opus, a living weapon designed to be far more than a traditional soldier or diplomat. Her genetic structure contained dormant capabilities that would activate under specific stress conditions, radiation resistance that could withstand direct stellar radiation, metabolic adaptations that could extract energy from environments considered uninhabitable, cognitive patterns that could process complex multidimensional problems in microseconds. "She's not just our best hope," Elena said quietly. "She's our species' evolutionary leap." The recovery chamber hummed. Aria's eyes flickered open, not the organic eyes she was born with, but quantum-enhanced optical systems that could perceive electromagnetic spectrums far beyond human limitations. Her first breath wasn't just breathing. It was a complex data exchange between her biological systems and the facility's monitoring networks. "Mission report," she spoke. Her voice was different, modulated with harmonic undertones that suggested multiple simultaneous communication channels. Dr. Rodriguez approached the chamber. The Horizon mission was more than a research expedition. It was a deliberate provocation, a first step in our larger strategy against the Krelax. Aria processed the information instantaneously. Tactical assessments, psychological profiles, potential evolutionary scenarios, all computed in the time it would take a normal human to blink. "The Krelax believe they understand technological warfare," Aria responded. "They don't understand that technology is merely an expression of evolutionary potential. We're not just fighting. We're demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to existence." Her genetic legacy was more than a weapon. It was a message, broadcast across the quantum realm, that humanity was no longer just another species waiting to be conquered. They were architects of their own evolutionary destiny. The chamber's quantum fields began to dissolve, releasing Aria back into physical space. She wasn't just recovering. She was preparing. The Krelax communication network stretched across 12 star systems like a vast, crystalline neural web. Billions of quantum-entangled nodes pulsed with information, each transmission a testament to their technological supremacy. They believed their network was impenetrable, a fatal misconception. Aria's neural interface began its assault with surgical precision. She wasn't hacking the system. She was becoming the system. Each quantum communication node encountered her adaptive algorithm, became a potential vector of transformation. Where traditional cyber warfare sought to breach or destroy, Aria's approach was infinitely more complex. She didn't just infiltrate. She rewritten the fundamental communication protocols at their most basic level. The first signs of infection were subtle. Microscopic changes in transmission frequencies, quantum entanglement patterns that subtly shifted, communication nodes that began to process information in ways that defied their original programming. Krellx technicians first noticed anomalies in their most secure communication channels. Messages would arrive slightly altered, not corrupted, but transformed. Statistical analyses showed minute variations that suggested something fundamental was changing. What they didn't understand was that each variation was a deliberate vector of psychological warfare. Aria's genetic modifications allowed her to perceive communication networks as living ecosystems. Where others saw data, she saw complex biological systems with vulnerabilities, potential, and hidden evolutionary pathways. The Krellx communication network wasn't just a technological infrastructure, it was a potential organism waiting to be transformed. Her approach was multilayered. Quantum-encoded psychological triggers were woven into transmission protocols. Each message carried not just information, but subtle cognitive disruption mechanisms. The Krellx collective consciousness would slowly be fragmented, their unified intelligence turned against itself. Deep within secure communication nodes, her adaptive algorithms began their true work. They didn't just infiltrate, they began to learn, to understand, to manipulate the very essence of Krellx technological infrastructure. A Krellx fleet commander received orders to engage a human outpost. The transmission was perfect, indistinguishable from standard communication protocols. But buried within its quantum-encrypted layers were cognitive disruptors that would slowly erode collective decision-making capabilities. Another transmission rerouted critical defensive systems, creating vulnerabilities that wouldn't be noticed until it was too late. Military-grade quantum encryption was rewritten, not to be broken, but to be subtly misinterpreted. Aria wasn't just fighting a war. She was conducting an evolutionary experiment. Her neural interface connected to multiple communication nodes simultaneously. To an outside observer, it would look like impossible multitasking. In reality, she was processing information at speeds that made traditional computing look like prehistoric technology. The Krellx had spent millennia perfecting technological warfare. They had destroyed countless civilizations by understanding and exploiting technological limitations. They believed technology was a weapon to be wielded. Humanity was about to show them that technology was an ecosystem to be transformed. Each communication node became a potential seed of transformation. Complex adaptive algorithms rewrote transmission protocols, creating communication pathways that would slowly fragment the Krellx collective consciousness. Aria smiled. The first phase of technological guerrilla warfare had begun. The Krellx didn't know it yet, but their most secure network was no longer their own. The Krellx collective consciousness was their greatest strength and their most profound vulnerability. A silicon-based intelligence that shared thoughts across entire star systems. They had long believed their unified mental network made them invincible. They were wrong. Dr. Marcus Reyes, lead synapsepsychologist for humanity's deep infiltration team, understood something fundamental about collective consciousness that the Krellx had forgotten. Uniformity is the enemy of adaptation. Aria's neural interface began introducing microscopic variations into the Krellx communication network. These weren't simple disruptions or viral attacks. They were carefully constructed psychological triggers designed to create cognitive dissonance at a species-wide level. In one communication node, a military strategist received a tactical report that contained subtle inconsistencies. The variations were so minimal that standard diagnostic protocols would miss them completely. But each inconsistency was a seed of doubt, carefully engineered to grow. Another transmission introduced complex philosophical paradoxes into routine operational communications. Mathematical proofs that seemed logical at first glance, but contained fundamental logical fractures. Metaphysical questions that would slowly erode the Krellx's belief in their own infallibility. The collective consciousness began to experience something unprecedented, individual variation. Where once their thoughts had moved in perfect, crystal-like synchronization, Now subtle differences emerge. A military commander might hesitate a microsecond longer before issuing an order. A scientific analyst would suddenly question a long-held assumption. Aria's genetic modifications allowed her to perceive these changes with unprecedented clarity. Each cognitive variation was mapped, analyzed, predicted. She wasn't just attacking the Krellak's communication network, she was conducting a species-wide psychological experiment. Hidden human outposts began activating long-dormant protocols. Quantum communication arrays that had been prepared for decades suddenly came online. They weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were cognitive resonance generators designed to amplify the psychological disruption. The first signs of fracture appeared in the most unexpected places. A Krellak's research station began experiencing what their psychologists would call cognitive drift. Individual researchers started developing marginally different perspectives. Minor disagreements that would have been impossible in their previous unified state now became points of genuine discussion. Marcus Reyes watched the data streams with a combination of scientific fascination and strategic calculation. "We're not destroying them," he reported to the human command structure. "We're giving them something they've never experienced: the ability to think differently." Aria's approach was revolutionary. Traditional warfare sought to destroy. Her strategy was to introduce complexity, to challenge the very foundation of the Krellak's collective experience. Each psychological trigger was a potential evolutionary pathway. Each cognitive disruption was an invitation to transformation. The Krellaks didn't realize they were being offered a choice: adapt or be left behind. Psychological warfare had entered a new dimension, and humanity was its unexpected architect. The Krellak's psychic disruptor charged to maximum capacity, its crystalline core pulsing with an energy that had decimated countless civilizations. For millennia, this weapon had been their ultimate solution, a technological marvel that could shatter the mental integrity of any species unfortunate enough to be its target. Aria Nakamura stood directly in its path. The weapon fired. A wave of pure psychic energy erupted, a frequency designed to liquefy neural pathways, to reduce complex consciousness to primordial neural chaos. It had worked on hundreds of species. Civilizations had fallen in microseconds, their collective intelligence reduced to meaningless neural static. But humanity was different. As the psychic wave crashed against Aria, something unprecedented happened. Instead of destruction, the energy began to transform. Her genetically modified neural network didn't just resist the attack, it began to absorb it. Quantum-enhanced synaptic clusters captured the psychic energy, breaking it down into computational components. Where other species would have been obliterated, Aria was converting the weapon's energy into a power source. The Krellak's monitoring systems went into shock. Their most devastating weapon was being processed, analyzed, and repurposed in real time. Aria's body became a living quantum capacitor. The psychic energy that was meant to destroy her was now feeding into her enhanced neural network, providing computational power beyond anything the Krellaks could comprehend. Evolutionary adaptation confirmed, her internal systems reported. The psychic disruptor had just become humanity's most powerful technological asset. Scattered human outposts received the data. Each transmission carried more than information. It carried a message of fundamental transformation. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were turning the most devastating weapon in the galaxy into a tool of liberation. Deep within the Krellak's command structure, confusion began to spread. Their perfect weapon had not only failed but had been somehow transformed. It was a violation of everything they understood about technological warfare. Aria's neural interface began to broadcast, not a traditional communication, but a complex quantum transmission that carried layers of information, mathematical proofs, evolutionary algorithms, glimpses of potential futures where species could coexist and grow rather than destroy one another. The psychic energy continued to flow, but now it was carrying something the Krellaks had never encountered, a vision of existence that transcended conflict. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was the ability to see potential where others saw only destruction. The evolutionary trap was sprung. And the Krelax were about to learn that true power wasn't about conquest, it was about transformation. The Galactic communication network went silent. Billions of quantum-entangled nodes suddenly stopped their constant chatter, creating a void of information that sent shockwaves through every known civilization. Something fundamental was changing. Arya Nakamura stood at the epicenter of this cosmic transformation, her body a living nexus of evolutionary potential. The Krelax were about to learn the most important lesson in galactic history. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were conductors of cosmic evolution. Hidden research stations across human-controlled space began to activate. These weren't military installations or scientific outposts. They were living laboratories, experimental platforms that had been preparing for this moment for generations. The first revelations came slowly. Intercepted Krelax communications showed something unprecedented. Their unified consciousness was fragmenting, not through external attack, but through internal complexity. Individual Krelax were beginning to think differently. Dr. Elena Rodriguez analyzed the data streams with a mixture of scientific excitement and strategic calculation. "We're not just fighting," she reported to the human command structure. "We're conducting the most elaborate first contact experiment in galactic history." Each seemingly random encounter, each apparently isolated conflict, had been part of a grand strategy. Humanity had been studying the Krelax for decades, understanding their psychological and technological infrastructure at a level no other species had achieved. The Krelax believed they understood technological warfare. They had perfected the art of species elimination, reducing countless civilizations to cosmic dust. Their silicon-based intelligence had always considered itself the pinnacle of evolutionary development. They were wrong. Arya's neural interface began broadcasting a complex transmission. It wasn't a traditional communication. It was a multidimensional message that carried layers of information beyond simple language. Mathematical proofs, evolutionary algorithms, glimpses of potential futures where species could coexist and grow. Scattered research outposts received the transmission. Each node became a potential seed of transformation, carrying information that challenged fundamental assumptions about existence, conflict, and evolutionary potential. The Krelax command structure began to experience something unprecedented: doubt, uncertainty, the first subtle cracks in their millennia-old belief of absolute technological superiority. Some Krelax researchers began to see the transmissions not as an attack, but as an invitation to something beyond conflict, a vision of existence that transcended traditional concepts of warfare and domination. Humanity wasn't just defending itself, it was conducting the most elaborate evolutionary experiment in galactic history. The galactic revelation was simple yet profound. Technological superiority meant nothing without the capacity for adaptation, for growth, for understanding. And no species understood that better than humanity. The Krelax thought this was a war. They were about to learn it was something far more complex, a fundamental reimagining of what it meant to be a spacefaring civilization. The moment of choice arrived with mathematical precision. Arya Nakamura stood before the fractured Krelax command structure, her presence a living testament to humanity's evolutionary potential. Around her, the remnants of their once unified consciousness flickered like dying quantum circuits. "You have 3 options," she announced, her voice a multidimensional transmission that carried more than sound. It carried potential futures. The first option: complete integration. Not subjugation, but a true merging of evolutionary pathways. The Krelax would become something new, something that transcended their previous limitations. The second option: isolation. They could retreat to their existing star systems, preserved but fundamentally unchanged. A form of cosmic quarantine that would prevent their further expansion. The third option: replacement. Krelax resistance fighters watched in stunned silence. Their most advanced monitoring systems struggled to process Arya's communication. She wasn't just speaking. She was conducting a species-wide cognitive assessment. Each word carried quantum-encoded psychological triggers. mathematical proofs embedded within linguistic structures, evolutionary algorithms that challenged fundamental assumptions about existence, conflict, and adaptation. Some Krellaks began to fragment immediately. Individual consciousness emerged where collective thinking had once dominated. Researchers started asking questions that would have been impossible mere moments before. Military strategists began to see potential beyond conquest. The transformation protocol was more than a weapon. It was an invitation. Human outposts across multiple star systems activated synchronized protocols. These weren't traditional military installations. They were living laboratories, experimental platforms designed to demonstrate an entirely new approach to species interaction. Dr. Marcus Reyes watched the data streams with a combination of scientific fascination and strategic calculation. "We're not destroying them," he reported. "We're offering them a choice of evolution." Scattered Krellaks resistance groups began to see the transmissions differently. What had once seemed like an attack now appeared to be an invitation to something beyond their current understanding. Quantum communication nodes that had been part of their unified network now became potential points of individual emergence. Each node carried the possibility of a new form of consciousness, one that valued adaptation over uniformity, growth over stagnation. Aria moved through their communication networks like a living algorithm. She didn't just infiltrate, she transformed. Where the Krellaks saw boundaries, she saw potential pathways of development. The most radical resistance fighters attempted to fight back, but their attacks were already being anticipated, their strategies already mapped and neutralized before they could be fully conceived. Humanity wasn't just defending itself, it was conducting the most elaborate evolutionary experiment in galactic history. The transformation protocol was simple yet profound: adapt, or be left behind in the cosmic evolutionary race. And no species understood adaptation better than humanity. The transformed star system hung in space like a living canvas of evolutionary potential. Where destruction might have been expected, a new form of existence emerged. Some Krellaks had chosen integration. Others had been carefully isolated. But all had been fundamentally changed by their encounter with humanity. Aria Nakamura stood at the observation deck of the Human Research Station, her quantum-enhanced eyes surveying the cosmic landscape. She was more than a soldier, more than a diplomat. She was a living bridge between species, a demonstration of humanity's true potential. The most profound revelation wasn't technological superiority. It was the understanding that true power lay in the capacity to transform, to see potential where others saw only conflict. Scattered throughout the star system, former Krellaks resistance groups now worked alongside human researchers. Their silicon-based biology merged with human adaptive technologies in ways that defied previous understanding of biological limitations. Research stations became living laboratories of evolutionary potential. Mathematical models that had once predicted species conflict now charted paths of cooperative development. Each interaction was an experiment in cosmic coexistence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez reviewed the latest data streams. The transformation was more than scientific, it was philosophical. Humanity had demonstrated something fundamental about existence. Growth wasn't about conquest, but about understanding. The Krellaks communication networks, once a tool of unified domination, now became platforms of individual and collective exploration. Where once there had been a single rigid consciousness, now there were possibilities. Aria's genetic modifications weren't just a biological achievement. They were a living demonstration of humanity's evolutionary philosophy. Each modification carried the potential for growth, for adaptation, for seeing beyond current limitations. Human outposts across multiple star systems activated synchronized protocols of exploration and understanding. These were not military installations, but living bridges between potential civilizations. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humanity had not just survived an encounter with a technologically superior species. They had demonstrated a fundamental truth about cosmic evolution. The most powerful force in the universe is the capacity to understand, to adapt, to transform. Some alien civilizations would see this as a form of conquest. Others would recognize it for what it truly was, an invitation to a more complex form of existence. Arya looked out at the transformed star system. Each quantum of space carried the potential for something new, something unprecedented. The Krillax had arrived believing they would conquer. They were leaving having been transformed. Humanity had arrived not as conquerors, but as architects of a new form of cosmic existence. The galaxy would never be the same.